In this video, we're going to take a look at how to build a link in bio website really quick and easy using Framer. Framer is one of the best no-code website builders, especially if you're a designer and you like to control the exact look of your site. So let's take a look at what we're going to build. We've got this link in bio site. This is responsive, so it works all the way down to mobile. And actually, we are going to include some really kind of neat features here, like these little animations where the buttons pop up. You can even do that on the profile picture up here as well. We're going to look at basically how to put in some of this text, how to do links and different animations here, as well as like a featured content area. You'll see that this site is really responsive, including all the way down to the mobile size, which is what a lot of people will probably be clicking for these link in bio style of websites. Now, Framer makes it really easy to create a site like this and to be able to even build a site that's larger than this. We'll get into some of the tools and features. Thanks to Framer for partnering on this video. Let's get started. You can click that link in the description to go sign up for Framer for free and be able to build this site. And that link is a free Framer template that you can remix and use to actually build from the exact same project we're working on. If we look at the canvas here, we basically have this desktop area where we're going to see desktop, tablet, and mobile. And then we also see on the left-hand side, we have pages. So these are the pages of our website. We have layers, so that's everything that's within your site, so all your graphic elements and everything. And then we have assets, which is like your templates, your different components, which we'll get into components, as well as any styles that you save, etc. And we've already got this layout that's pretty easy to work with. You can see it's responsive, so we have 3 different layouts here. We have the desktop breakpoint, the tablet breakpoint, and the phone breakpoint. So basically, once your screen size reaches width of the desktop, which would be 1200 pixels, then it's going to break down to the tablet version. And once it reaches the bottom of that, it's going to be the phone version. And so when we make our updates over here on the left-hand side to anything within this main section, like for instance, I want to get rid of this sort of feature piece. We're going to put something below our links. All I have to do is click on it. This is just like a design tool. I click and press the delete key, and I can delete out these different sections. And then as you do that on that desktop version, you're going to see that it does it on the mobile version as well. So it works all the way down and kind of cascades. And then if we make edits to the mobile version, it'll kind of stay just with the mobile version. And so on the left-hand side here, what we're going to want to look at is our layers panel. And we're going to see here that we have layers on all 3 breakpoints. I'll mainly be working with the desktop breakpoint right here. And so we have these things called stacks, and stacks are like containers that let you organize and sort elements as well as space them out. So it keeps things contained, and it also spaces them out and gives you all these different controls. And basically, you'll want to put stacks inside of stacks inside of stacks. So just think of them as containers, and they're really helpful when you're laying everything out and keeping it really organized. And so we have a stack here that's basically all of this content. And so we can drop that down, and we see that we have the avatar up here, which is like the profile picture, and we have some more stacks in here. And if we click on this stack, you'll actually see, and I'll zoom in here for you. I'm going to press Z and just kind of click and drag to kind of zoom in. You'll see that we have this pink space here, and that's a gap. And so that's part of the stack, being able to allow us to kind of click and drag and space things out just like that. And you'll see on the right-hand side all of the different settings and attributes of whatever we have selected. So right now we have this stack selected that kind of has the handle and this little header. And on the right-hand side, we're going to see things like size, position. You can link. So if I wanted to add like a clickable element, and then we have our layout. So stacks can be horizontal or vertical, and you can distribute them and keep them centered or keep them kind of positioned to one side. And we have gap right here. So that's that spacing that I was talking about. So we can increase or decrease that gap. And that's kind of what we'll do between gap and padding, which are these blue lines right here. Padding sort of that spacing on the outside or edge of the stack. And so if we were to increase that padding, you'll notice that basically that stack gets padding on the top and bottom of it. Or in the case of it being horizontal, you would get padding on the left and right. So now that we know that we have all these attributes over here and this different spacing and everything that we can kind of use to create and space out everything. Let's go ahead and lay out a basic structure of our page. We already have it started, but I'd like to include some of these things together, and I'd also like to delete some things. Like for instance, I'm not going to keep this little handle right here, and it's just a text element. So I'm going to select it and just press delete. It's as simple as that. And so I can double click here and just edit this text however I want. So I'm going to put in here pixel and bracket for this example. And then I've got some other stuff here that I kind of want to make sure it's stacked together, because I want to be able to control the spacing between all of these elements, like between the avatar and this pixel and bracket header. So I'm going to start to maybe organize and rename some of these stacks. I've got this stack that includes everything. I'm going to call that maybe sections, and I can actually just double click on that to rename it. So we'll call this sections. And then I'm going to have a bio area and maybe like the social icons. So for the bio area, if I kind of look at these different stacks, this one here is the social icons. So I can double click that and just name social. And then up here, I'm going to go ahead and stack these two together. So I have this header and I have this avatar. I'm going to hold shift and kind of select them both just by clicking on one, holding shift, clicking the other. You can also hold command, or if you're on Windows, you can hold control to select individual things and kind of make multiple selections. But shift is just going to select these two, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go ahead and make a stack. So I'm going to add a stack here that is basically these two elements together. Now when we do that, then we're able to control these elements and control all that spacing. And then when we resize things, the spacing is going to stay there as well. So for instance, I've got this little avatar right here, and I would like it to be bigger. And so I'm just going to click on it and then hover over the edge and click and drag to scale it up. It's that simple. And so once I scale it up to a size that I like, maybe right in there, then I can go and basically edit the spacing. So we've got this stack here that I'm going to call bio, and it has my picture and this little header. And then I can control the spacing between. So I think I'm going to put maybe a gap of 16 between these two, and we'll just start with that. And so I've got this little gap spacing, and to put in an actual picture, so if you double click and kind of get into some of these elements, this avatar here would allow us to fill it with an image. So on the right hand side, as we scroll down, we're going to see this little fill area. We can click on that, and we could select a solid color, which we probably don't want to, but you have solid color, gradient elements, and then image. And so I would just click on image and then hit choose image. And if you already have your profile picture ready, then you can go ahead and select it and open it up. So there we go. We've got a profile picture and the header, and we're starting to build this out. Now we've got the bio section. I'm going to look at this social section. So we have these social icons, and this is an example of a stack that is actually horizontal. So the stack above had vertical spacing, which means it's a vertical stack. The social icons are a horizontal stack. So we can edit the gap between all these social icons just by going over here to the right, kind of scrolling down a little bit. We have our gap down here, and we can kind of look at what we would like as a gap here. And we're also going to look at how to change these social icons. So I've got these in here, but they don't have to be the ones that you start with. You can actually edit these icons. And so we're actually going to do a couple things here, but in this social area, we have this logo, and if we look on the right hand side, we actually have these vector icons, and Framer has several different vector icon sets that you can use and just sort of plug in, and it's really quick and easy to change the icons. So this one, in this case, is called Phosphor. It's got the old Twitter logo, and you could just click on that icon and then search for other logos. So if I wanted a YouTube logo, I could find YouTube and click on that and just swap it out. It's that easy. And then I have color selections here. So depending on the icon set, you can change the width of the lines. You can change the alpha. So that would be like the transparency, as well as the color of the fill. And so we'll come back to these icons here in a second, but let's keep moving on here. We've got our buttons. And so these are our links, right? It's kind of the main thing this is for. So we have links, and the way that we're going to create these links is actually with a component. A component is essentially a reusable designed element that can have different states like hover or pressed or different animations between them. And that reusable element, we can set up variables. Now this is starting to sound really kind of techy and maybe beyond designer, but I'll show you it's really simple and easy. And all it means is we have a reusable element because we want to use multiple buttons, right? And so we're going to have multiple links with the same reusable element where we don't have to redo all of the styling every single time. And the variables are basically the attributes that we want to be able to change between each link. And so for instance, if you want to change the text of each link, like one's going to be YouTube, one's going to be LinkedIn, then you would want to just create a variable for that text. Same with the icons. You just create a variable for the icon, and then on your website, when you kind of duplicate this component, it's an instance of all the different, or of the original component. Then you can just go in and edit those little elements. It's really easy. I'll show you how to set that up, and it's actually a really powerful thing for designing websites on Framer. So let's go ahead and get into that. We're going to delete the bottom two links here, and we're going to start with this one. We're going to kind of just restyle it. And so this blog link, I can just click on it to make sure I'm selecting that stack, not just the text. And so I can delete that stack really easily. And I'm going to rename this stack that contains all the links to, of course, links. And once I have that renamed, then I'm going to go in here and we're going to create a component out of this. And we're going to create it in kind of an interesting way where we can show a background of a stack underneath the actual button element. So I want to have this stack that is basically the look of my button. And I'm going to right click on that and add another stack. And that's like a container on top of the container, which might sound a little weird, but I'll show you what it is here in a second. So with this stack that includes the text, we're going to lay out this button. We're going to do an icon on the left, maybe another one on the right, and kind of show you how you can create this. So we have our portfolio text in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and swap the background of this to white, and we'll give it like an outline, like a nice chunky outline. So on the right hand side, when we have that stack selected, we can go down to the bottom here and we're going to find, the fill area here, and we're going to be able to maybe make it less gray. We're going to switch that to white. And then we have border down here as well. So we can add a solid border. I'm going to go ahead and try to just use all black in this document. And then we're going to do a width of 2. And so that will create kind of a chunkier looking border. And what we can do with the background to make this look a little bit better, if we zoom out a little bit, Command or Control plus and minus will zoom you in and out. We can actually select the desktop and then we can change the background of the desktop. So if you wanted to have like a gradient background or maybe even an image or photo as a background, this is where you would do that. Select the desktop, go to the right hand side, go down to styles, and we have fill. And so we're going to change this fill. You could add an image if you wanted to. In this case, I'm going to just do a solid kind of tan color fill. And I'm going to just kind of find that little color here that we're going to add in. And I think this one looks pretty good right here. And so we can click off of that. Now we have a background. If we zoom back in, our buttons are starting to kind of take shape here. Now I'd like to add an icon here on the left-hand side. And so I'm going to go up to Insert. And this is where we're going to look at the icons packs. And so down here in the elements area, we go to icons and you have all these different packs. I'm going to use Lucid, I think, in this case. Or actually, I'm going to pick this phosphor to stick with that. We can click and drag it. And we can actually, you can see where you can set it anywhere. And we're going to set it inside of this stack. Now we have an icon in here as well. And I'm actually going to create that fill background around that icon just by right clicking it and adding a stack. And so now we have a stack inside of here. And now we're going to talk a little bit about our width and height as far as fill or fit or fixed and what that means exactly in web design. And so when we look at this icon, you can see how it just sort of created this really large container. On the right-hand side, we're going to see that the width is actually set to fill. So it's set to fill the space between portfolio and the rest of the button. For these icons, we actually want that to be a set amount. So we're going to do fixed. It sets that fixed amount to the width that you had. So we're going to maybe make that 48. And we're going to make the height 48 as well. So these are both going to be fixed amounts. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit and make sure that we actually see the fill element here. And so we're going to make it red maybe. After that, I'm going to take a look at the icon itself just by clicking on it and seeing the size 24 by 24. That's what we're going to keep, but we're going to make this icon white. And so down here at the bottom, we're going to swap it out to be white. And then I think we'll make the width, it could be 1.5, it could be 2. kind of whatever fits your website. We're going to add one more icon to this button. It's going to be on the far right side before we space everything out. So I'm going to go back to that insert dropdown, go to phosphor. We're going to click and drag. I'm going to bring an icon to the right-hand side of portfolio. I'm going to switch this icon to be an arrow. It's going to be pointing right. I'm just going to search for arrow, and I'll find a bunch of arrows. And then there should be one that looks pretty small right here that's pointing to the right. That'll be like our little, indication that it's a button that you can click. And so we've got this in here, and I'm going to put this in a container as well. We're going to right click it and add stack. So it does the same thing, right? So we go back up here and we go to fixed, and we're going to make this 48 by 48 once again. So 48 by 48. And then make sure that icon is 24 by 24, and we're looking pretty good. We probably could have just duplicated this one in this case, but we're going to just keep going on. So now to make this look better, we're going to want to space things out. So we click on our main button here, and we're going to add a little padding. So that padding is going to be inside of the edge of the button, and it's going to give us space. I'm going to say 8 for starters. So we're going to add some padding. It's going to need to be a decent amount of padding. Let's see, maybe something like 32 to give us a little bit of space with this button. And then we want to space out these buttons kind of evenly, right? And so instead of having a gap of 10, which kind of controls the gap, we're actually going to say 0. And then what we're going to do is the text in the middle is actually going to be that fill instead of fit width. And so we select the text, we go to the width, and we switch it to fill, and it will fill the rest of the space between the button elements. And then we're going to, of course, center that text. So when you still have that text selected, you can scroll down and you can find your alignment and just center it like that. Now this is a little bit more space on the edges than I would want. So I would click back on this button and maybe adjust that padding again. And the padding left and right might be different than the padding top and bottom. And so we're going to click on padding per side, and then we can adjust the padding differently for each set. So maybe the right and the left is something like 24, for instance. And so once we make our adjustments here, we can kind of figure out where that padding should land. I'm going to go with 32 on the top and bottom and maybe 16 on the sides. And then for these little buttons over here, we're going to go ahead and give them rounded corners. To do that, we're going to scroll down to those styles, and we're going to look at the radius, and you can just adjust the radius. So we could maybe make this 8 and see what that looks like. That's pretty decent. And so we're starting to get some of those rounded corners. We can actually change the rounding of the button as well. If we click on it and go down here and select the radius, and this button, it could be 16, it could be 12, depending on what you want as far as roundness on that. Now we're going to create that shadow look, and I'm going to show you how to make this a component so that you can reuse this element really easily and also add these cool hover states. So you remember how I created this stack inside of a stack. So in the outsidemost stack of your button, we actually want to change the background of that to the same color as our border. And so that's going to be black in this case. So we go down and we find the fill. We're going to add a fill of black to that. And we also want to make sure that we round the corners as much as we rounded the corners of our button. So in this case, it's going to be 12. So now we have this fill layer right underneath our button. And so we can actually shift our button up a little bit to show that shadow. And so we need to make sure that our height is set to fixed. And right now it's set to fit. And so I need to change that height to fixed. It's going to be a fixed button size, in this case 64, but it could be whatever you want. And I want to make sure these are unlocked so that when the button changes width as it scales down, it doesn't also change the height. And then I'm going to go inside this button stack, kind of look at the next layer, which also has a fixed height, which is perfect. Now what we can do with this, it's very particular where you select. And so we need to make sure we select the outermost stack, and we're going to add a padding to this stack. And the only way this works is if we also make sure that our visibility or overflow is set to visible and not clip or hidden. That allows all the elements inside of this stack to move outside of it and not be clipped off. So then we go up and we change the padding, and I'm going to change just the bottom padding. And we're going to actually give it a little bit of padding on the bottom, and that's going to shift this button up. And you can see as I kind of click, it shifts the button up. Now it's still clipping it, so we just need to make sure that every single one of these all the way up to links, even the links stack that goes around all of these buttons, also doesn't allow any clipping. So links, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go down to layout, and actually no, down to styles, and then overflow needs to be set to visible. And now we can see that button outside of there. So you can see how we added this cool shadow, and we can actually animate this with a hover state. We're gonna do that now and make a component and create those variables so we can just change all of these elements for all the buttons. So we're gonna go back to that stack that's inside of the links that kind of holds this together. And this stack, we're gonna right click on it, and at the top you'll see create component. When we click on this, we're gonna title this new component. In this case, I'm gonna say link button. That'll be the name of this shareable or reusable component. And we hit create, and now that's gonna take us to this component editing mode. So in the top here, you see you have layers of this component editing mode. And you'll see here, we have this little kind of breadcrumbs link style here where we can go back to the home page. Right now we're editing the link component button inside of the home page itself. And so if we click on the home page, we're back where we were. If we now click on this component, there's only certain things that we can edit on the right-hand side now. Instead, we have to double click it and we go in and edit that component. So inside of here, it's kind of hard to see our shadow on this dark mode. So a warning here at the bottom, we can switch to light or dark mode. So I'm gonna switch to light mode really quick and we can see that shadow bottom. And so that makes it a little easier to edit this component. Now I'm inside of here. I wanna make sure that I get my text correct and I get my icons and everything correct, and then I'll create variables. And so this text, I actually want to be this sort of DM Sans font. And so you can see in your text area, when you double click any text, you have font and text weight and color and all these different elements that you can change. So I'm going to change the font to DM Mono, and you can use whatever font you want here. And then I'm going to switch the weight to medium, and we'll keep it at 15 pixel. That's fine. And you can adjust some of the line spacing, letter spacing, and everything else here as well. I think I might actually change it to 14 pixel in this case. 15 might be a little big when we go down to mobile. But now I have kind of my text set here, and I think everything else is set pretty good. I'm going to create some variables, and variables, like I said, are just things that we want to be able to edit back on the home page. Remember, we lost a lot of the features on the right-hand side, and so now we need to create the variables of the things that we want to change. And so I want to change or be able to change the actual text itself. We can see on the right here that we have content and a little plus icon. When we click on that plus icon, we can create a variable of text, and we can name this variable if we want to. You can just leave it named what it is, title in this case. And then it's a text area. I'm going to say yes. And we have the default text that's sort of your placeholder text. Doesn't really matter what you put here. You can actually go ahead and edit that anyway. So I'm just going to leave it as portfolio, and we can edit that on the main page. So we can edit now the content here. I also want to be able to edit the fill color of our button, or not our button, but our icon over here. And so I've got fill. When I click that, I can click on it and create variable, and I want it to be color. And then in this case, I'll just leave it as fill and leave the default color here. I also want to be able to swap the icon. And so we click on the icon. In this area here where we can swap it, I'm going to click the plus icon, create a variable, and just create a variable that is the icon. And so now we have all these different options that we can swap on this button. And this is sort of the default state of the button. You can actually create different hover states too. So when we click on this variant, so this is our component variant number 1, and this is basically saying this is the default state, the primary default state. And so when we click on that and have that selected, we see we have a hover state down here as well. So if we click on that and click hover, now we have this hover state as well as the default state. So on the hover state, we can make edits to the way this component works, and that's what it's going to do when you actually hover on it. And so when we click on this hover state, make sure you have it selected. I'm actually going to drive down deeper into the stacks and make sure that I change the padding. So if I want it to lift off of the page a little bit, I'm going to click on this stack, look on the right-hand side where we had our padding, and I think this is actually one stack underneath. So I might need to click on the overall variant and take a look at that. Yeah, so when I click on that level, that's that stack that we contained everything in. We adjusted that padding down here from the bottom, to kind of scoot that button up a little bit. So we can adjust it even more. And maybe I'll go from 10. We can see what 16 looks like. Yeah, so it's kind of lift off a little bit more when we hover over it. And to test this, we can actually hit this little play icon up here in the upper right, and we can hover over our button and actually see it move. And so now we have this movable button, which is really cool. And if we click on it, nothing happens because we need to enter in a pressed state. So we can go back here in the upper left, and if we click on the variant again, you can see we have pressed down here. So we click on that, and now we have our primary default, hover and pressed. On the pressed state, I'm gonna make sure I have it selected, and then we can go down to, well, we could probably go down to 0 actually, and so it will just be the border. So it's like we press it down. If I hit the play icon, now we have hover, and then we press, and we're actually pressing this button down, which is really cool. I'm gonna go back here, and I believe the last thing we may or may not need, if we scroll to the top, it's possible we need to add a link as a variable, but we'll check on that. We might be able to just link on the component itself on the home page. The other thing we can do here is I'm gonna add another option over here on the right, which is another variant. So you can have the same button, but change something on the button or include or not include things. And in this case, I'm gonna add a variant, and this variant over here is actually gonna be just an image instead of an icon. So if you have something like a logo you wanted to upload, instead of using an icon set, you could do that really easily just by creating a different variant here. And I'll show you how that works on the home page. I'm going to right click on that and add a frame. And frame is kind of like a stack that you don't really need to control the positioning inside of it. And inside of this frame are these shapes, but instead I'm going to just delete the shapes, but I've kept this frame, and I'm going to add an image fill to the frame. And so if we scroll down on that frame, we'll see we have this fill section. I'm going to add in not a color fill, but an image fill, and choose the image. In this case, I have this little icon for my Convert Save software. So I'm going to open that up and include that in here. And then the other thing I'm going to do is add that as a variable. So fill being a variable on this variant would allow me to change images as well and not just the color. And so we can add that in and be able to use that later if we wanted to swap out other images or create more image buttons instead of icon buttons. So we've got that in there. And for me, I actually don't like the fill on this guy. And so I'm going to remove this fill as well on the outer part of the button, the background of it. And I can remove it on this variant essentially. And now I have this little icon in here, and I can actually change the size of that. If I wanted it to be a little bit larger, I can make it like 32 by 32. And now my image icon's a little bit larger, which I like compared to like how the fills are over here being larger. And so now I can go back home, and I have all these options on this component now. If we click on it and scroll down a little bit, we can actually see that we can add the different variants here. So I could have my image variant, or I could have my logo icon variant, and then we can change the text of it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and write YouTube. So this is like our first link. And then instead of this icon, I'm going to click on it and go to search for YouTube and find that YouTube icon. So now we have a YouTube icon in here, really quick and easy. And we can duplicate this component to create all our links really quick. And so duplicate, you can right click and hit duplicate. That's also Command D or Control D if you're on Windows. I'm actually just going to maybe duplicate this 3 times, 4 times out here. And we could go in here and just click and change our different icons and text titles here on the right hand side. So this one could be Instagram. I could change the fill color to something slightly more Instagram-y, and then change the logo. If I search for Instagram, I'm sure I can find the Instagram icon. And then we'll do LinkedIn down here. And so I'm going to click on this guy, go here and change YouTube to LinkedIn. You can see how components are really powerful when you're able to just do this so quickly and kind of reuse all these elements. And I'm going to click and change the YouTube logo to LinkedIn. And the last one here, I'm going to do maybe website. Maybe you have a website link and you just want to do something like that. So an icon that works well maybe for websites, we'll just go ahead and go purple on the fill a little bit. Not quite pink, but we'll do like a deeper purple. But an icon that I think works decently, especially in this phosphor set, is the globe icon, which is kind of like this website icon. So you could use that for your website. And then we have all these buttons here. And I noticed that if we click on one of these buttons, we scroll to the top, we don't have linking capability. So I can go back into the component just by double clicking on it. And I can click on this variant and make sure that links are also a variable. So we created a link variable. I'm gonna have it open up in a new tab as well. I'm gonna look at variant 2 on that primary, make sure link is a variable. It is, so that works. We're gonna go back home, and now when we click on this button, we actually can add a link down here at the bottom as well. And so we can link a page or URL. I could just type in youtube.com and that will link right there. So you just type in and link each one of social platforms that you want to link here. Now, when we're editing our site, and I'm gonna switch back to dark mode here for you guys, so it's not all light mode. When we're editing our site, you'll notice that it's been cascading down to the mobile version this whole time as well. And you might find these little quirks like, oh, why is this down here, right? And all you have to do is click on it. You can click and drag and move it up, or you can use your arrow keys up and down when you have something selected and just move these sections around. It's that simple. And so we are already building out this whole landing page here. And you can see that I can actually add maybe the border here to my profile picture that we added here at the bottom. And so we click on the profile, we go to the right, we see border, and we can add a nice solid border. So it kind of has that same look to it as the buttons themselves, right? We can also do the same thing that we did, that little trick where we put a container in a container and we show the background underneath on this avatar just by right clicking it and going to add stack. So we now have the avatar that has the profile image with the border. We have this stack, and this stack, as long as we do what we did before, which was a fixed height, we're going to just switch it to fixed height. We're going to make that fixed height a lot less than that. So let's look at the avatar. It is 116, and so the stack should be 116 as well. And actually, I think the reason it did it was because it locked these two together. So we're going to unlock those. The height's going to be fixed. It's going to be 116. So we have this container here, and I actually think that we're going to have it be fixed there as well and not really wide, because it needs to be the same as the circle underneath. Because when we add a fill, it's going to show underneath anywhere the size of that stack is. So we're going to scroll down, add this fill. It's going to be black. You can see that we need to round the corners as well. So we can go to radius. We can just say 99999, and we've got this overflow, and we're going to want to be able to have that be visible, just like we did with the buttons down here, and make sure that all of these all the way up are visible. So I'm going to select bio and sections and go in here and click on overflow visible. And then back on this stack, we can just bump up the bottom padding like we did before. So we bump up the bottom padding a little bit, and maybe I think we did like 10, we could do 8, whatever we want. We're going to see that that kind of looks like it's got a button element there, right? It's kind of popping up off the page. So that's how we start to style some of this stuff. The header here, we can change the text. I'm going to change it to, instead of enter, I'm going to change it to something interesting. There's I think tanker, which is all caps and kind of rounded. And you can see how it's really pressed together. So what I can do here is actually change the letter spacing from a negative amount to a positive amount and kind of get that tweaked just right. And so after that, another thing we can change are the social icons. And so we can change the color of these. If we select them all just by holding shift and kind of selecting them all, we can change the color of them all at once. And so I'm going to make them black. I'm going to actually change the alpha here and just make it 0. So we have outlined icons. And then the width of them, we can change to 2. I think that matches our icons over here. So we could be 1 or 2, just depends on what you want. And then in order for them to have like a cool lift effect or like resizing effect, and as well as in order for them to link to the websites, we need to put them in their own little stacks as well. And so on each of these, we're going to right click and add a stack. And that stack is actually going to need to be a fixed width and height. So we have width and height over here. Instead of fill, we're going to go to fixed, and we're going to make that maybe 32 by 32. And so for each of these stacks, we'll do the same thing. So we'll just right click, add a stack, and then make that fixed 32. And you can make sure that these all fit each other, or that these are just 32 by 32 fixed width and height. But each of those are going to be able to basically contain the icon and then you can actually add a link. And I accidentally did the height there, so we'll go to fixed on the width and make it 32. You can see at the top that we can link these. And so if we wanted to link, maybe this is going to go to linkedin.com, for instance. Now that frame is linkable. The actual icon is not linkable, but the frame is. And so then we can add these cool effects right down here, and we can add a hover effect on this element. So these are not components in this case, but we can still add cool effects to different states like hover and press. So if we go to hover, we can click and add a scale effect to it. And now when we just go and take a look at our website, and actually in this case, yeah, we're gonna hit the play button. We have our website here, we have our components here that kind of have this nice animation, and then you can see here we have this little scale effect on that guy. And we added the link as well. And so you can do that for each of these, and you have the scale effect all the way across. Now I can see that we need some padding adjustments up here at the top, and then we'll add this little featured content section at the bottom, as well as like a little footer, which is really quick and easy to add. If we go down here and just hit T for the type tool, that's that text tool up here at the top. We can actually add in a little bit of text down here at the bottom just by clicking. So it adds its own little section. In this case, we can say made with love by Pixel and Bracket, right? And we're going to change this a little bit because I don't want it to be this font. I want it to be the DM mono font. And so we've got this all selected on the right hand side. We're going to go to font and go down here to DM mono. And we've got the DM mono font. We're going to go sized pretty small, just like our buttons, down to 14. And I like it being medium. And I'm going to sort of make sure this is centered, and we can actually make it be we can make it a text element, like a text box with auto height right here. If we want to, we can just grab the edge of this, kind of click off, grab the edge, and squeeze that text box to make it bump down. And then if you want to, you can just paste in like an emoji here. So instead of made with love, we'd paste in like a heart. I'm gonna right click and go to emojis. This would be just based on your computer, or just by going and finding an emoji icon to kind of copy paste. And so I'm gonna squeeze this down a little bit more. So it says made with love by Pixel and Bracket. And actually, instead of squeezing it down, the other thing you can do is, if you want it, like I want it to have that paragraph break right here. So I'm going to go ahead and press return on that. And now we have this made with love by Pixel and Bracket. And then we can add in a featured section here with some featured video content, or maybe a featured post or something like that. So let's go ahead and add in that featured content section. It's gonna be right here. I'm gonna check and make sure that I have a stack for the bottom kind of footer area. So I just have the text element right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in a stack. I like to keep things organized in stacks. I'm gonna call it the footer. And I'm gonna duplicate this stack. You can easily duplicate elements just by holding Option or Alt and kind of clicking and dragging, and you can duplicate. And now I have 2 of these. And I'm just going to maybe double click on this, and we'll call it latest content or something like that for this little featured section. And I'm gonna make this the header text. And so inside of my text styles here on the right, I'm gonna go and select and do the tanker text that we did before for the header. And it's gonna be pretty small, I think, unless we make it a little bit larger. And so I'm gonna make it something like 24, and that'll work. And so we have a header for this section, and I'm going to add in a YouTube video, and we're gonna make it that same sort of button effect. I'm gonna go up here to insert, and you can actually search for different elements. So like if I wanna add in a YouTube embedded video, I can just click on or search for YouTube, and then click and drag this out and kind of place it inside of here. And I've got a YouTube video. And so we click on this element, and on the right-hand side down here, we can find that all you have to do is paste in a YouTube video link. And once you paste it in, it's gonna be the video that you want. And I'm gonna go ahead and round the corners on this, and you can do it in the same way, just by adjusting the radius. I'll make it 12, so we've got some rounded corners. We can add that border again, like we did before. We'll make it 2 pixels and make it a black border. So we're starting to get that same look. Now I do want it to be the size of the buttons, right? The width of the buttons. And I'm gonna show you a little bit about that, because this section that we created down here does not adhere to the width of our big container because we haven't set the width of our big container. So when we look at the top, we have our sections, and those are contained here in this width of a fixed amount of 960. I think for this type of site, I'm going to do about 768 instead of 960. So I'm going to do a fixed width of 768. And I want all of the content inside to sort of fill that space. And so every one of my sections inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and click and select them all the way down. I want their width to actually be fill. And so we're going to go to fill, and it's going to kind of stretch out all the different content elements. And then I also want the max width of the sections container to be 100%. So you want this max width right here set to relative 100%. If you don't see it, you can add a max width right here and make sure it's set to 100%. So basically the width will scale down because it will never be larger than your window size. It'll always be a maximum of 100%. So you can see now that even though we set that width, it scales down. We didn't set the width yet for this video, so it doesn't scale down. You see how it kind of crops and goes outside the frame. We also have this footer up here, so I'm going to bump that down by clicking on it and pressing the down arrow key, as long as I have the footer itself. And then over here, we're going to look at this latest content section. So we had this YouTube video in here. In order for us to make that button effect, right, we're going to wrap it in a stack. And so we're going to add that stack. We're going to add in the background of the stack here on the right, down at the bottom. Let's add a fill. So it's going to be a black fill. And then I might need to do one other thing here, which is get the video width to the right width and the height to the right height. So I'm going to go to that first before we change any more on the stack. And on this video, I'm going to go over here to the right because video is a certain dimension. And so you want it to keep that dimension, right? And so I'm going to click on the icon here on the width and the height. I want it to stay that exact ratio. And on the width then, the height's going to be fixed, but on the width, I'm going to change that to fill. And so that's going to kind of scale it out, but make sure that the height scales proportionally. Now, I also want to make sure I have the border radius and corners on there. I do. So now I go to the stack, and I want to make sure that if I scroll up here, that I have these set appropriately as well. So it's set to fill, that's correct, but fit should actually be fixed. And once I have it set to fixed, I'm going to click on that lock. And so that's going to allow us to bump it up. As you remember, we kind of show the background. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. We can bump the padding up of the bottom of this container that's containing the YouTube video. We're going to say 10, that will match everything else. And then if I scroll down some more, we do need to give it a border radius that matches the video of 12. And so now when we look at this, we can kind of zoom in and we see we have this same sort of button effect here that we have on the other buttons. And if it's maybe a little bit larger, you can adjust that. I'm going to click on that stack, and instead of 10, I'm going to make the padding over here on the right, maybe 8 to sort of match these a little bit more. And what we could do really quickly on this, just to give it the effect, is we could right click on that, not the YouTube video itself, but make sure you have the stack selected. When we have that clicked, we're going to right click on it and then go to create component. So if we create a component, maybe we're going to call it our promo for our promo video. I'm going to create that, and inside of here, I could add that hover state if I wanted to, just to give that a little bouncy effect. And so I've got the primary here. I can scroll down and I can add hover. We're going to switch to light mode really quick so we can see this. And on the hover state, I want to add a little more padding. And so as long as I have the uppermost layer selected here, the uppermost stack, then I can add some more padding here. You know, maybe we can go up to 12 or something like that. And you'll be able to feel that it's kind of that button effect as well, even though the video is still playable. And we'll make sure the video is playable within the component too. So we go back home and we have that here. So we have latest content, and now we have this piece. And we've actually created a lot. We'll make sure though, as we scroll over here, that everything's showing up well on our mobile site. And you can see that there's an issue right here. And so that was the part that, because we created that stack early, I believe we actually needed to lock these together on this level. And so they did need to be locked together. And that's where some things you need to kind of change and adjust once you get to the mobile side. So you see that I selected the promo component on the desktop layer, and I made sure that it scales proportionally by locking the width and height together. And that fixed our issue here on the mobile site. But we've got this all pretty much built out. There's things that you can tweak and edit. When we selected the actual desktop itself, you'll see that we have padding on that, and that kind of controls a little bit of the top here as well as the sections. So the section container here, the stack, has some padding in it. If we scroll down, we'll see it's got padding. And also the desktop as a whole has padding, same with tablet, etc. And so that controls the space up here. You could shrink that in either spot. I could shrink maybe the top padding up here if I wanted to, maybe bring it down to like 64, just to scoot that a little bit closer to the top, if you will. And so some of the hover effects obviously don't work on mobile, but the pressed effects do. And then if somebody does visit your site on desktop, it's not scaled out super big. It's stuck to that 768 pixel dimension. It's fixed, but it has some really fun elements. And so if we hit the play button here, we can actually see that we can use this to scale down and take a peek at the different breakpoints and how they kind of function and make sure that they're working. And then if we scale that out, this is on the desktop version, right? And so we have these different elements like our icons, hover effect that we've created. We can go through all these different buttons. We can click on them. We can, they're not linked, some of them, so you can actually click and kind of play with the actual animation. We've got this video, I can click play and it's an embedded YouTube video, and it actually has that same like bouncy effect as well. And then we've got our little footer down here. We can actually add in a little section up here. I think I had that on the main site. Really easy to add text anywhere. Plus, we have some text down here we created that I could just pull from the footer. So if I select that text and hold that Alt or Option, I can kind of duplicate it up and maybe put it right inside of here, maybe right underneath that. I might actually want to put it in between, maybe right here. And then we can control the spacing between those elements as well. If you want to control the spacing between all of your sections, you can actually click on sections and you'll see that we have a gap, and we can control how spaced out every section is compared to each other. And then within your sections, you can control that spacing as well. And so instead of this made with love, I'm going to actually write in, maybe I create software and web design tutorials for creators. That'll be like my little bio area. And we make sure that that scales down well and looks good on every size, and it does. And we can play that and kind of look. And now we have this little bio piece in there as well as all of our buttons. And to publish this, all we have to do is click that big publish button. And when we click on that, it's going to publish the site to a free Framer app domain. And we can actually change our free domain to a couple different things and edit the front end of it, the little subdomain. And we can even add in our own custom domain. So we have this published there now. So we can actually click on that link and it will go to our published site. And here it is. And we can use that published version to kind of look at it and say, oh, I need to space some of this content out a little bit. I need to make my profile picture bigger. I need to do some of this stuff and edit it and see how the links work and everything like that. But if we go back and we can look at the site settings, so you can change that domain. So we click on not localization, but we click on this button right here, which should take us to our site settings. And we can see that we have a site title. We can change our title and description and everything. But on the left-hand side, we also have domains. And you can get a custom free Framer domain. So you see we have a couple choices here. And if I wanted this to be a link in bio sample .framer.website, we'll see if that's available. Click check, and it is. So now you can go visit that site at linkandbiosample.framer.website. And you can actually see that site by clicking on that, and it exists online. So you actually can have this free domain and create a free link in bio website and style it however you want and add in whatever links and content you want. Doesn't exactly have to be what we did here. You can actually do that and have it free. Or you can link in if you want a little bit more professional version, because you will have a made in Framer logo over here. There might be an edit button that nobody can edit but you, but it might show up. If you want to get rid of those things and really have a professional look, you can actually look at the Framer plans and upgrade to web hosting and a custom domain of your own. You can connect your own domain. And so that would be like the really professional way of doing it. But this is an actual link in bio website if you've been able to follow along. Thanks to Framer for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you guys for watching if you followed all the way through. That's how you can create a link in bio website or any website with Framer, which is an awesome tool for designers and any kind of content creator or anyone wanting to build their own custom website. It's like being able to just design with graphical elements and build out this really cool website. Go check out Framer. I'll leave that link in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.